Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
Hi, Scandalized listeners. Charlie and Jackie here with a really exciting announcement.
We're coming back to Podfort in 2026. We'll be live at the Boise Contemporary Theater on Friday, March 27th at 3 p.m.
This year, we're going to be digging into some of the juiciest fashion faux pas in American politics. You won't want to miss it.
We'd love to see our amazing listeners, so bring your friends and come talk scandals with us. And best of all, it's free.
That's Friday, March 27th at 3 p.m. from the Boise Contemporary Theater. See you then.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Idaho's Micron Technology posted its latest earnings report last week, covering the second quarter of fiscal year 2026, with the company delivering extremely strong results. Industry experts say the results were primarily driven by massive demand for AI-related memory chips. So, what does all of this mean for the average investor and for Idahoans who many times are impacted by what happens at Micron? So joining us once again to talk more is Jason Norris. He is with Ferguson Wealth Management Group. Jason, nice to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be back.
Okay, so Jason, can we just start with some basics here? For folks who don't follow the semiconductor industry closely, what does Micron produce? And why are their memory chips so incredibly important right now?
So Micron produces, it's called DRAM chips, which are little memory chips. And for decades, those have primarily gone into home computers, cell phones, computer servers. And so it's been more of a cyclical based on consumer spending and business spending. But now with artificial intelligence, because of the massive amounts of compute power that's needed to run artificial intelligence, a lot more memory is needed. And so Micron right now is in a sweet spot that they can't produce enough of those chips to sell to their customers.
So, Jason, let's talk a little bit more about that AI component, because when many folks, I mean, myself included, think of AI, I think of companies like NVIDIA, right? Or OpenAI. I don't think about Micron. So how does Micron fit into this AI ecosystem?
So if you look at a company like NVIDIA or even Dell, these companies make servers or compute systems. So they're not just selling chips, and to put these systems together, they need a lot of other components. And so therefore Micron sells into this supply chain. Basically, we'll just say to put these boxes together, and there's a lot of memory chips in those boxes. So NVIDIA is a customer of Micron, as well as other companies like Google, Amazon, Dell. A lot of the customers that are building these boxes, Micron sells into in this space.
So there seems to be like an AI boom going on, Jason, or quickly heading our way. And I've read some things where industry experts say that it's similar to what happened in the early days of the internet. So from an investor perspective, do you see those same similarities?
So we don't. And the main reason that we believe it's different this time, and those are infamous words in the investing business, is 25 years ago, when the internet was being built out, the major companies that were doing all the spending were telephone companies and cable companies. So AT&T, those types of companies. They had very little growth and they had a lot of debt. The major customers building out AI are companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, OpenAI, very profitable companies. So they're able to spend and invest all this capital. And so we don't see a bubble coming. And when you look at the demand numbers, it seems like there's growth, at least in the near term, should be sustained. Now, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, could we have a pause in that? Most likely, but at least in the near term, we believe maybe it's more like 1996, 1997. and not 2000.
So let's go back to Micron for a minute, Jason. Can you break down that earnings report that just came out last week and break it down in terms for, those of us who may not be as schooled as you when it comes to fiscal earnings?
So just looking at the numbers, Micron reported about 24 billion in revenue. The previous quarter, they reported 13. So the revenue almost doubled in a quarter. And their expectations for this calendar year are analysts expect them to sell $140 billion worth of product. In 2025, they sold 40. So they're going to increase almost $100 billion in revenue in 1 year. So there's great demand, and that's why we're seeing all the building going on out there in Southeast Boise. So the company is in a sweet spot, but there is cyclicality in this business. And so the investors, while optimistic, are still a little bit cautious about the longer term strength.
Okay, so Jason, for folks who are in your industry, when you see a company like Micron posting those big earning gains that you just talked about, what are you paying attention to that's beyond those numbers, that's beyond grabbing those news headlines?
The key for Micron right now is the sustainability. And in the near term, demand is great and they're selling all the product. But if you look out maybe 1 to 2 years, investors are not concerned, but looking at how sustainable is this revenue run rate. And looking back at history in Micron, and it's a commodity-based product, is if their customers decide to slow spending in their investment, that impacts Micron greatly. So investors want to see kind of the sustainability as well as long-term contracts that Micron may have with its customers. So those are the key areas of focus right now.
Okay, so let's talk about folks maybe with a 401k or a pension, Jason. How exposed, in your opinion, are they already to the semiconductor industry and to what's going on in the AI ecosystem?
So if you look at, just the S&P 500 in general, about 15% of that is in semiconductors. So if you just have an investment in the index, then you have 15%. If you look at AI companies in general, beyond just semiconductors, it's about 40 to 50% of the index. And this would include companies that build data centers, it'll include companies that do the heating and cooling in these data centers. So investors have a lot of exposure to this theme. It's not just in technology. If you're just looking at investing in the broad market.
So, Jason, in your opinion, is the AI industry becoming more of a foundational part of investment? I'm thinking similar to maybe like when smartphones came around, right?
That's a great comparison because it is a major shift in how we do business, how people work, how people plan a vacation using Google Gemini to do an itinerary. So it is foundational, and the key is the compute power that it needs to run these run the programs. It takes a lot. So we believe it's going to increase productivity in the U.S. and it's going to be a net positive. But there's going to be some fits and stops over the next several years.
Well, Jason, you were born and raised in Boise, so you know very well that Micron is one of Idaho's leading employers. How much does its success or its failure have the potential, to ripple through our state, right? Even if you're not personally connected to the company.
So with after their recent earnings, I believe I read that they expect about 17,000 new jobs increase based on the spending they have over the next couple years. And those aren't just at Micron. Those are all the ancillary jobs to support the other small businesses that serve and have contracts with Micron. So if Micron stumbles or there's a long-term structural change in an AI investment, then that'll have a big impact, not just only with the employees at Micron, but those who have contracts and supply them with a lot of equipment into those facilities.
So a lot of folks, as we know, don't invest in the stock market, and they may even tune out a conversation like the one you and I are having right now. So, Jason, what should folks who don't invest know about what's going on with Micron and this potential AI boom that could be happening?
So for those who don't invest, there's great opportunities in this technology, and there's a lot of great companies that are investing in it, and they're household names. So if you are looking into the market or considering it, and you use Google all the time for your search, Google is a great way to get into, the AI investment just beyond the semiconductor place. So there's a lot out there, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a large part of the markets as well.
We hear a lot right now about how AI has the potential for job displacement. I'm curious, do you think there is a potential where AI could drive productivity? I mean, maybe it could possibly drive wages.
So we believe there will be job displacement, and all technology transitions. It does occur, and some jobs go away, but new jobs are created, and historically, those new jobs are usually higher paying, more productive, and society benefits. But there will be areas of the market in the labor force that will be displaced. The interesting part we're seeing now is a lot of or computer science jobs are being displaced. Software coding, which used to be one of the hottest jobs over the last several decades, now a lot of companies are using AI to write their software code. So it's not always the very low end type job. It can impact everywhere, but the U.S. economy has showed it can evolve, and historically we've become more productive, and standards of living increase as a whole.
So, I mean, if you had a crystal ball, this would be easy. But with that said, when you look at the AI economy, what do you think it could potentially look like, let's say 5 years out, possibly a decade out?
So that's a great question, and a lot of it comes down to the adoption of how people are utilizing it. Healthcare could probably see some of the biggest benefits. If, for instance, if you're a radiologist reading scans, if you could use AI to help you read those scans quicker, so maybe you can see one or two extra patients a day, over the course of time, that's very beneficial. And even, call centers and other service types jobs may make businesses more efficient and lower costs. We're already taking advantage of it in our industry by increasing our amount of research we can do on a daily basis. So we see it being a net benefit. But there are risks out there. There are some concerns. You hear the concerns of the robots, and all the jobs are going to be lost. And we think that's not going to be the case.
So finally, what do you think are the biggest unknowns about the AI economy that investors and even policymakers should be paying attention to right now?
The biggest unknown is how powerful are the tools, because there's been tests done that those who are giving AI tools instructions have turned off elevators in buildings, have done a lot of things, nefarious things. And so if theoretically, bad actors were controlling an AI agent, that would be a negative, and that's concerns out there in the industry. But there's also that gets weighed with, the freedom to grow and expand and make it as useful for everyone and not restrict what it can do. And so it would be, if you have a bad actor, like in any type of business or industry, if they're basically writing bad code and it's causing issues for businesses and hacking and all of that. So unfortunately, that's always going to be around.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time for us today. We've been speaking with Jason Norris with Ferguson Wellman Wealth Management Group, talking about the latest Micron earnings as well as the impact of AI. And thanks so much for listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. Do you have thoughts about today's episode? Make sure you email us at idahomatters@boisestate.edu or reach out on our socials. If you learned something from this episode today, share it with someone else who needs to know about it.